yogis! Today we're going to be running through all of the restorative prone yoga poses. Let's get started. Today we're going to start out in Vilasana and a few different variations of Vilasana, otherwise known as Child's Pose. For this specific stretch, we're going to see that we have a support of the block underneath the head, and we can always put a bolster underneath the thighs, or in between the thighs rather, for additional support. Now we're going to come into extended Child's Pose. So from here, we can bring our arms above our head at shoulder width. This gives a nice stretch to the latissimus dorsi and a few other of the upper trapezius muscles for the upper back. It's everybody's discretion what feels better, but just giving a few different options for variation in Vilasana. The next thing we're going to show you is a third variation of Vilasana. So for this is the wide-legged version of this. So we're going to take the knees and we're going to open them up so that they are either the width of the mat or wider. And again, same positioning with the arms outstretched. We can continue to keep the block underneath the head, but for this pose, we're going to remove the block and simply allow the head to come down, forehead resting on the mat. Another alignment cue that you can remind your students of is stretching or elongating the lumbar spine and tailbone back toward the wall behind them, and elongating the crown of the head as if a string is pulling their head toward the front wall. So a nice traction stretch to the full spine. And from here we're going to incorporate a side stretch. So we can walk the hands to the right, and we want the hands to be together, either on top of one another or touching. And this creates a very nice stretch through the left outer hip, and of course through the entire left side body. Now we can walk back to center, and we find that we can walk ourselves all the way over to the left, as far as feels comfortable for the student. Of course, all these stretches we're holding for 5 minutes or longer, and now we can bring ourselves back to center. From here, we're going to go into extended puppy pose. So for this, we'll need to bring our knees back to center, to hips width distance. And we're going to come up onto the knees, keeping our hips in alignment with our knees. And now all we're going to do with our upper body is walk the hands forward. And we're going to keep walking forward without pushing the hips back too far, because remember, we want to keep the hips in alignment with the knees. And now drop the ears so that they're in alignment with your bicep, which should put your forehead pretty close to reaching the floor. Of course, we can always use a block underneath the forehead if the floor simply isn't accessible. Now, a variation of extended puppy pose is called threading the needle. So for this pose, we are going to come up onto supporting by our left hand underneath our shoulder. So just come up to that. Right. Okay, so here we're just going to create a little bit of balance and equilibrium until we go into the next pose. And now what I want you to do is place your left palm, one palm width farther in front. So just pick up your palm and place it a little bit farther forward. Now you're going to take your right hand and thread it underneath your left at shoulder height by placing the palm face up. So we want to create that external rotation of the clavicle and upper body. Our right shoulder is down on the floor, and our right side of our head, so around the temple, right side of the head should be on the floor. And here, for cueing wise, we want to make sure that our left hand is in alignment with our left shoulder. So I would say bring your hand to the right a few inches. That looks better. All right, so this is an exceptional stretch for the upper thoracic spine. And we're also getting a passive hip stretch out of this too. All right, so to come back out of this pose, we'll slowly come out by planting our right palm down onto the floor or elbow and coming back to center. Now from here we'll go to all fours, so we're going to go into cat pose. Now for the next 3 poses, which will be cat, cow, and half bow, I want to mention that these are not poses that we will tend to hold for 5 minutes or longer, with the exception of cat pose. These are poses that you can easily introduce into the beginning of your restorative practice to help to warm up the spine and create a little bit of movement there. So it's very common and paired for Balasana to go straight into different variations of cat and cow pose. So for proper alignment in cat pose, cueing wise, we want to make sure that our knees are in direct alignment with our hips and that our palms are directly in alignment. And we want to make sure that our forefinger is actually pointing forward. So our index finger should be pointing forward, and that creates external rotation in our upper body. So from here, we want to, as if we're arching our back like a Halloween cat, we want to arch this part of our spine straight up toward the ceiling, allowing our head to just drop down completely. This creates an amazing stretch for the entire spine, but also creates a bit of traction for the cervical spine. All right, now we're going to drop directly into cow. So my best cueing for this is to imagine that you have a string that's pulling your belly button straight down toward the floor. We want to keep the arms as straight as we can. This is a back bend in the sense of keeping the entire spine in a nice curvature. Our gaze can be directly forward or very slightly tilted up toward the sky. From here, we're going to go into half bow. So you can take your right arm and grab onto your left foot. This is a back bend as well as a balance pose. And depending on one's flexibility, they can certainly find a happy medium in this pose. Again, this isn't one that we will be holding for a long period of time. It's more or less just something that we use to help warm up the spine at the beginning of our practice. All right, we can come back down into box pose or tabletop position. Next, we go into lizard pose. So the best way to get into lizard pose is to start out in a very simple plank pose. And we're going to start out in plank and step our left foot to meet our left hand. If you can't step in one step your foot all the way there, you can always shimmy the foot forward. Now from here, what we want to do is simply stay in an upright position supported with our palms. This is certainly as far as some people can go. The second variation is dropping down onto our elbows. And if you find it within your practice, you can recommend that this is a secondary version. Here your head should be in a neutral position or hanging down to create a nice decompression for the cervical spine. All right, and coming back out of this, all we do is we reverse exactly how we went into the pose. So coming back up on to the plank position and stepping back. From here, we're going to come flat down onto the stomach. And we're going to walk our hands out. Perfect. Now we're going to come up onto the forearms. Here we're in Sphinx Pose. So Sphinx Pose is a very gentle back bend, and what we want to focus on doing is making sure that we're not tensing up the low back when we're in this pose. Another alignment cue is to ensure that we have our elbows directly underneath our shoulders and that our hands are in alignment with our elbows. So to bring them out just a little bit farther, there you go. Our gaze can be straight forward, or we can allow our head to hang giving a nice stretch to the cervical spine. So we can go into any variation that feels good for us. Because we hold a lot of tension in our neck, I recommend that in poses like lizard and in this Sphinx pose, that it feels very good to give some decompression to that cervical spine. All right, next we're going to come back up onto our knees for half frog. So for half frog, we can indeed, we're going to be stretching the right side body. So we can go ahead and straighten our left leg out behind us, come down onto the mat. Yeah. And we're going to bring our right knee up to the level of our hips. Now, a few cueing measures to take. Depending on the flexibility of the student, they may be able to get their knee all the way up to the level of their hips. However, that might just not be possible for some body types. So they can simply bring their knee up as far as is as accessible. Then from here, they can have their arms out at a T. And for this, you'd want the palms facing the floor. So there's a few different variations that can be modified through this, but it's best if you're in this position that your forehead is resting on the floor. All right. Now, coming into our final pose for prone, we have frog pose. So we can push up through the palms of our hands, bringing the hands underneath the shoulders, coming back into a kneeling position. And for this to set up, you're going to need just one thing. You can take a towel and fold it in half, or use a yoga blanket to set down on the outside of the yoga mat. So we're going to take a wide angled stance in this. So a variation of a regular frog, which means that you have your feet flexed, that won't be the case for this particular version. Our left knee is on the towel, which is on the floor off the mat. Our other right knee will be brought to the opposite side of the mat. So I want you to widen your right knee farther. Now the next cue that we are going to look for is that the big toes are touching. Instead of having the foot flexed out and the legs straight, which is a different variation of frog pose, for this restorative, we're going to be creating a diamond shaped position. So from here, you're going to go into a few different modifications of the pose. So here we want to walk the hands forward and just drop down onto the forearms so that you're resting on the elbows. And you can go ahead and let your head hang down, allowing gentle traction to the back of the neck. And the weight of the head, again, our head weighs about 8 pounds roughly, 8 to 10 pounds. So allowing the head to hang and drop down creates a gentle traction for the cervical spine. Now, a few other factors about this pose. The cueing for that left knee that is on the towel. We want to be mindful that as we deepen into the stretch, that towel is going to continue to slide out to the left. Now it may go an inch, it may go a few inches, or it might not move at all. But the fact is that you can let the client, or rather the students, know that as they're working through deepening into the pose, that they may feel that they need to adjust their upper body to move along with the widening of the hips. So just bring this to their awareness as they go through the stretch, that as they deepen in and that left knee moves and slides out, they may need to adjust their upper body to move their forearms a little bit to the left to compensate, to keep that spine in alignment. Well, that wraps it up for our prone yoga poses. Hope you enjoyed it, and see